Okay, welcome everyone to our GTAC session today. And I'm thrilled to have this fantastic panel here with us. And we're going to learn about a major transformation at 311. And we're going to see many operational efficiencies and the amazing work that has been done over this big project. So with me, we have Gary Yorke, director from 311 Toronto. And you can imagine the kinds of calls they've had in the last 2 years. And he's with City of Toronto. He's joined with Tim Smith, managing principal and COO from Catalyst. And then we also have Justina Vachwovic. I hope I said that properly. And senior principal success manager at Salesforce. So welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. And thank you in advance for sharing with our GTAC members. So before we start, I would love, my computer just got stuck here. Gary, if you could walk us through the massive lay of the land at 311, and just to give everybody an idea of what you had to start with and what you're working with before we jump in further.
Thank you very much, Sangeeta, and really thank you very much for having this forum. It's a pleasure to be working with Justina and Tim on this particular opportunity as well. In terms of 311, it's an organization that never sleeps. You know, we see ourselves at the front end of the city. We manage the interactions, you know, with almost 3 million people and a population of the city of Toronto. We want to make sure that we also reflect the diversity and the needs of the diverse organization and residents, businesses, and visitors to the city of Toronto. So we make sure that we manage those interactions and have the ability to do it in 180 languages. And even though, you know, in 2020, we did about approximately 3.6 million interactions, in 2021, we moved to 4.3 million interactions. So we're always growing. And what's interesting is, you know, our public is letting us know that they want to be contacted in multiple ways, in different and various channels, and most importantly, not necessarily the phone channel. From a City of Toronto perspective, there are about 44 to 45 divisions. And we're all looking at making sure the customer experience is that, you know, where it needs to be and meeting our demanding public. In terms of the 311 modernization, we are the front line, 7x24, 365. But really, this particular initiative is more than 311. It's bringing the city to a new environment, a new way of doing and communicating and interacting with the public. So we wanted to transform the citizen experience and improve access to the city services. But some of the key drivers also was the evolution of the citizen expectations, the digital evolution as well. We all know that when we interact with banks and the retail environments and what have you, you actually interact in multiple channels and what have you. And from a city's perspective, we've dictated in the past that you have to contact us via the phone. Really, in this driver for change, we want to move from, you know, calling us to connecting with us. We're also architecting for the future needs or what have you. So this solution is not just for, you know, this year or next year or the next few years. I know with the assistance of Justina and Tim, we looked at the 5-10 year horizon. I looked at authentication, things of that nature, to make sure that even though we might not be ready from a city perspective, that feature and functionality is there. Also, we want to talk about efficiencies and what have you. And in terms of modernizing outputs, we're looking at this particular evolution evolved with at least 600 to 650 service requests that we had to digitize. We wanted to make sure that we also looked at the knowledge base that represented 7,000 records and making sure they're easily accessible, not only for our agents, but to the public as well. When we looked at continuing that diverse understanding, we wanted to make sure that the languages that we utilize were at least 50 languages they could use via the portal. So we're not dictating in the past, just as using English. We're now making sure that we have diversity in mind and accessibility in mind as well. When we look at interactions, when we first launched, we had over 500,000 interactions immediately. Twitter, you know, following 30,000 people. And we immediately had a surge of almost 1.3 million interactions that we had the previous year before. We also wanted to make sure that every interaction before, only 30% of interactions were captured. Now through this ITIL ideology and methodology that we implemented with the assistance of Tim and Justina, 100% of 4.3 million interactions are now going to be captured. That means data drives the future, drives accountability and transparency. When we even look at deflection of service requests, initially in that first period of time, it was around 17%, and it's actually gone to about 21% as well. And overall, we also have an increase in terms of self-service and what have you, in regards to 34% of an increase there. So right now, without a minimal amount of change management and proactive media interactions and communication strategies, the public are already adapting to this new environment. Going forward, we're going to definitely be more conservative and focused on communicating with the public and connecting with the public in different ways. I'm really looking forward to the conversations and the questions that we're going to answer, and interact with. But at a high level, we wanted to make sure that this particular project, that started with a 12-month horizon, was done in a remote environment. And working with Tim and Justina in a remote environment, we're able to drive this $5 million endeavor and make it successful and hit our timelines as well. So very excited about sharing this particular journey. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. So Gary, is it okay if I stop sharing the screen now and we just jump right into panel discussion?
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, so, I'm sure the pandemic made things move a lot quicker, but the planning for the whole 311 Toronto at your service must have been planning much more earlier than that. Can you tell us some of the specific key drivers? I know you talked about a few over there for the project, and what were some of the specific service improvements that you wanted to deliver to the Toronto residents?
Thank you. Great question. First of all, even though we were able to deliver this in about a year and a half, this was a 5-year journey with a lot of negotiations, navigations, and making sure that's just not a 3-1 conversation. It's the City of Toronto conversation, in which multiple divisions, in an integrated fashion, saw the value add proposition that was brought by this particular transformational journey. So it's not just improving customer service for 311, but it's improving that brand, trust, and confidence on the interaction, accountability with our citizens in Toronto. In terms of what was really important, we wanted to make sure that self-service was a key driver. We wanted to make sure that we automated our services in a timely fashion and made sure it was accessible to the public. So we made sure that our design was accessible in design. We wanted to make sure it was inclusive. We wanted to make sure that it also was equitable. So even though we looked at this perspective from a tier 1 perspective online, we made sure that they had digital information and also to be able to service people to the counters as well. And this particular evolution and journey was with Tim and with Justina and doing it in a phased approach. I think the biggest driver for us was to make sure that we crawled, walked, and ran. And in a methodical way, we were able to demonstrate the returns of investment and the outcomes in a controlled fashion. So initially, when we started with a pilot. In that pilot, we only did a subset of services, and we really wanted to test that platform with Salesforce. But even before we could start with Salesforce, we had to test the market and see what, in our opinion, what was the best product out there. And looking, through Gartner and other sources and analytics, we kind of determined through a fair and transparent process that Salesforce was the organization that we wanted to partner with. So from a procurement perspective, we started that first. Once we secured, that relationship with Salesforce, we went through a pilot. And that pilot, we tested the solution with a particular third party and looked at Toronto Water in some subsets to understand what it meant to move from on-prem to cloud. What were some of the benefits immediately that we would find and some of the complexities so we're not caught off guard? And making sure from a pricing model and methodology, we also took those appropriate steps. So with that pilot, we were successful. Normally an integration of that nature within the city takes about 12 months. We're able to do it within 3. And that's with the leadership of this team and some other people as well. And the good thing that came out of this was that trust and confidence. And really what we were able to do is win that City Manager Award for excellence in customer service, which set the foundation and the trust and confidence with other divisions to allow us and trust us to work on those 600 services versus those 5 services and make sure that we took the wheel for that. Even though we took the steering wheel, it was a village. And it took about 150 people to make it happen over those 16 months and what have you. And it was very exciting to work with Tim and Justina on that, with the understanding that, for example, with Salesforce, one of the key things that we worked with was developing a Spark. And working with Salesforce to understand the sequences and resources that were required to make this happen. So it wasn't just buying some software and then moving on and trying to figure it out ourselves. We worked with Salesforce to understand that roadmap and gain that expertise and that confidence. But then through another step, we procured, an SI. And that SI was Catalyst, and Tim was the leader of that, is the leader of that organization. And we're successfully able to look at those outcomes, articulate the values that came with that, and stick to our roadmap through about 20 to 22 sprints to deliver service in an effective manner.
So yeah, I'm just thinking that this is like massive scale, like to modernize City of Toronto. There must have been a tremendous amount of challenges, people, process, technology. Tim and Gary, did you guys want to divvy that up and share some of the challenges that you had to overcome?
Sure, Tim, if you want to start, and I'll try and add on some things.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you really start looking at, 311 modernization or any modernization effort within a large public sector entity, there's a hill to climb. And I think, one of the great things about the relationships of, Salesforce, the City of Toronto, and Catalyst throughout this process is, we really had an earnest and genuine commitment to work through those challenges in a very collaborative and constructive manner. And, I think that was really the foundation and the building blocks for the success that we all collectively were able to experience throughout the implementation. But, 311 is it's a large ecosystem that, for all intents and purposes, touches just about every aspect of a city's operations. And so the coordination and collaboration amongst all of those interdependent groups that all have, different goals and objectives, and ultimately aligning all of those different goals and objectives towards the ultimate success of the implementation effort, I think was a huge undertaking. And I've got to be honest, I mean, we would not have been successful without all the tremendous guidance and oversight that the City of Toronto provided our team in helping us navigate those environments and navigate those potential obstacles and roadblocks. And the teamwork across the board was just absolutely tremendous, from the 311 side of things, from the IT and technology side of things, and then also from ultimately those downstream business units that were participating in the initiative and the modernization effort. But I really do think that an earnest commitment to partnership and an earnest commitment to working through those difficult issues as constructively as possible really set us up for success in the long run. Gary, I'd love to hear some of your opinions on the matter as well, but I really felt that was very key to our success.
Absolutely. Well, I like to say that, adversity, everyone can smile when things are going great, but adversity really demonstrates your colors and your commitment. And yeah, there was some adversity in the last, a little bit, the 5 years, absolutely, but even during the implementation, we had to do a lot of stakeholder engagement, and, gaining that trust and confidence. It's just not saying something, it's doing the due diligence and understanding the business outcomes and the drivers and how we affected our divisions and our partners. We were able to, get the sponsorship from council and some key stakeholders within council. We were able to get the mayor on board and get his leadership and guidance as well. And also the city manager was instrumental in terms of seeing the vision and removing some roadblocks, which really, truly helped. I also want to say it took over 150 people to make this happen within the city alone. So that's tremendous in terms of the size of the lift, not to mention Tim's team and Justina's team, the multiple conversations we had, and really, to come to give a great example of how we were able to move the obstacles. And I think you remember this, Tim, when we're actually doing the cutover. We started the cutover around 5:30 in the afternoon on a Friday, with the expectation, we had a great map. We knew exactly what we were going to do, all the steps that had to be done. And we thought we were going to go live by about 6 p.m. on Saturday. And around 11:30 in the evening on Friday, we all realized that wasn't going to happen. There's some challenges, small challenges, but as a team, we definitely pulled our boots up for sure, our socks up, and we worked through the night. We made sure that we went live on Sunday at 4:30 in the afternoon. And that was amazing to see everyone pull together, do the long hours, sacrifice the time with their loved ones and their families. Even ironically, we went live on Halloween. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but people sacrifice their time with their families. And once we went live on that 4:30 in the afternoon, people could celebrate. Some people went trick-or-treating, some people did other things, but the bottom line is we celebrated that win, and that was a beautiful thing. So yeah, adversity, 100%, but collaboration, partnership, trust, really, really got us to the finish line. And with the people that are here.
So I want to go on that train of thought on collaboration. With so many different business units in the city and divisions, what kinds of things did you do? What was your approach to make sure everybody was collaborating and aligned towards the same vision?
First of all, strong governance. So the co-leaders on that governance committee was myself and Lawrence Etta, who represents technology. And once we demonstrated alignment and a commitment to that outcome, really people couldn't resist. Once we brought in the clerk's office around privacy and made sure this was, a very transparent process, we brought in security to make sure that any concerns around cloud, because 5 years ago, cloud wasn't probably a positive word within the city of Toronto, and now it is. But it still takes a lot of effort. But we brought those stakeholder engagements right to the front and brought them through the journey. And I think that's what really helped us be successful.
Okay, great. And Justine, I want to go to you now, and then Tim and Gary, you can chime in after. If other municipalities, they want to embark on the same kind of initiative, what are some critical success factors that they should keep in mind? So if you can kick it off, Justina, and then Tim, Gary, you can jump in.
Sure, thank you, Sanjita. So Gary got into it a little bit and spoke about governance. I mean, governance is paramount to an effort of the size. Typically, cities have, multiple divisions, so many different stakeholder groups, trying to align everyone based on, the varying priorities is always the toughest part, right? And getting everybody rowing in the same direction. And any good governance strategy is typically anchored in a vision, and a vision that, everyone can see themselves in. So if you can define and articulate a really strong vision that is anchored in business value, like outcomes, why are we doing this? What are we going to get out of this? And to client focus. And in this case, it was both your internal clients, your employees, and your external clients, your citizens, and kind of keep that focus throughout the engagement. Communicate the vision widely, make sure that everybody understands, where you're going. And then hopefully that vision and those outcomes permeate all the critical kind of decision-making that happens throughout the initiative, so that you can keep everyone focused and are not, tempted to kind of deviate from the objectives that you had at the outset just because of, technical difficulties or whatever happens on a day-to-day basis. You maintain the enthusiasm of everybody who's participating. And I think that's really important also to translate that vision into business objectives for your, stakeholders, and specific metrics so that you can monitor, during and after the fact, how you're doing, how you're actually performing against those objectives that you set out for yourself. And whether, it's reducing call resolution time, whether it's reducing the amount of time it takes to onboard your employees and train them, whatever it is, making sure that you have that defined and you can see how you're performing against it is really, really key. And so when Salesforce was involved with the city, we participated, we got Gary's team and all the business stakeholders involved. We also worked on the IT side of Marco Palermo's team, just to make sure that there was clarity around what that business value looked like, what the city would get out of the modernization effort, and how it would translate to making life better and easier for citizens using the services and for employees who now had a better tool to work with.
Cool. And before Gary, Tim, maybe you guys want to also answer this question. It just came in. Thank you, Justina. I liked your information. So here's a question. The panelists mentioned that they took an agile approach with 20 to 25 sprints. Was the city already working in an agile way? If not, how did they gain the confidence of your leadership to move away from waterfall?
Gary, do you want to take the first part of that?
Yeah, sure. That very, very fair question. And, I think an honest answer is we used waterfall. We knew that we had to change. And this was a perfect example that where we're allowed to pivot. Now, did we do fully agile? No, we did not. I would say that we did a hybrid approach, and we had some growing pains through that particular process. But with teams' leadership and partnership and understanding and tolerance in some areas, we were able to successfully navigate and really articulate those outcomes. Now, in some cases, the sequencing had to change because of certain drivers and politics that were in the process. But at the end of the day, we followed that process. We followed that methodology. And I would say by the mid, 10th sprint, I think we had everyone on board on the process and refined certain things that needed to be some improved. But I think the methodology is solid. The hybrid approach is excellent, and I don't think we're ever go back to going back to waterfall. But I do believe we'll be in hybrid in some way, shape, or form going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as an integrator, we oftentimes go into new customers with sort of a mental picture of sort of how our methodology is delivered. And, I think when we think about governance, we also think about, very rigid and strict structure and sort of process. But I think another really important part is flexibility and adaptability. And so, the City of Toronto were tremendous trail guides for the Catalyst team to come into the organization, understand culturally what some of the characteristics of the organization were, and then how we could best adapt sort of our process to meet the needs of the City of Toronto and really provide value and encourage the appropriate types of contribution and collaboration and sort of constructive discussion about what that path forward looked like. And so I think there was a significant level of adaptability and flexibility. And to Gary's point, we did sort of implement kind of a hybrid waterfall agile approach, but the vast majority of the actual process-based delivery revolved around the agile methodology. The waterfall side of it was to build some certainty out across the entire project timeline to make sure that we weren't going to get into a position where we had scope and budget overruns and things along those lines. But kudos to the City of Toronto, project management teams, the business teams, and the technology teams, because they really equipped our team with the tools that they needed to be successful within the environment.
Cool. So I know one of your objectives was to be more equitable, to have more equitable access to city services. So such an important question. How was this accomplished?
Well, it's funny, I was speaking with someone the other day around AODA and accessibility and things of that nature. And the Canadian legislation, especially Ontario legislation, is very, very, very different than other organizations in terms of the standards. And it's a high level of standards and a high level of accountability that comes along with making it accessible to the public. So when we created that particular implementation plan, we made sure we started with accessibility in mind. So for example, we looked at language to make sure that we weren't just telling everyone that you had to speak in English. So we used the 50 languages that prominently that people use. And the ability to translate that data and go into the back end system was fantastic. The ability to navigate through the website, the portal, and also to the mobile app as well. Shrink, minimize, expand images and what have you. That was really important. The ability to actually also attach images and data to the records was something that I know a counselor, specifically Counselor Ainsley, was very, very adamant about, the city not being able to do that for many, many, many years. He was extremely, extremely pleased that we're able to do that and provide that through demos and then at the end state as well. The other thing we want to make sure is, even though we're talking about digital services and everyone's romanticizing, especially during COVID and what have you, not everyone has a phone. Not everyone has internet.
Yeah.
So the phone experience is really crucial. Also, what we were also able to do was create a counter within City Hall called Toronto at Your Service that also made sure that we provided service to you in from a 3-1 perspective in a face-to-face organization and manner. We never did that before. So we started that in a phased approach in 2019 to make sure we started to walk the talk and really be accessible and equitable across the lens. Most importantly, too, it's for our staff. We cannot ask our staff to provide great customer service if they don't have the tools or the culture or the support to make that happen. So not only did we look at equitable service and fair service and from a customer exterior or perspective, but interiorly we want to make sure that our staff saw that value add and had those tools, and also our internal partners saw that as well.
Great, great. And Tim, did you want to add anything here?
Yeah, well, from a the city of Toronto really made our job very easy as it related to the technology implementation of equitable services. They had really put a lot of time, energy, and thought into the architectural components that were responsible for providing public-facing digital assets to the constituency within the city of Toronto and the residents within the city of Toronto, so that as we built our systems, we ensured that AOD compliance requirements were met, that we played nice with the existing governance structures that were in place within the city of Toronto, and ensured that whatever technology we implemented met all of the requirements from an accessibility and equitable access standpoint. So it worked out very, very well. We were very thankful for the city of Toronto's guidance and leadership throughout that process. And we worked very hard in concert with them to make sure that whatever we built from a technology standpoint in the back room had all of those capabilities available to it.
And just to add to that, I think one of the things that that's unique in this particular build. I know we started with communities in mind in terms of the front end, and when we worked with the city of Toronto and with technology and EODA implications and what have you, we actually moved from communities to WordPress. Now that's something that's not standard, but it really helped address the accessibility concern in a very timely fashion. And we also incorporated lessons that we learned from phase 1 with the pilot. So we also knew what we had to do and what we're not going to repeat from phase 1 as well.
And I just want to circle back to one point you both were speaking on, and I think, Tim, you were talking about being flexible and adaptable. So I know, Gary, we spoke around adaptability and having that leadership mentality, the adaptive leadership. How important, so if you're talking to other ops leaders, how important is that in before you embrace such a project, is that sense of adaptability?
The bottom line, to be successful, you can't be rigid. We started with a vision, but that vision wasn't just my vision. It was best practices, understanding the market, understanding the trends, understanding the best people that could actually help us, and learn from that as well, and then bring that back into the city. So, for example, in terms of adaptability, one of the things we did do was, from a back end system, we did look at our processes with the 600 plus service requests, but we actually wanted to do in a phased approach. So the first phase, to be adaptable, we would love to transform everything and make it brand new, but we also had to be realistic. And what we did from an adaptability perspective was to do a lift and shift. So the work was really on the shoulders of Catalyst, 311, and technology, not on the internal divisions. They already had a lot to do. And once they saw that, that also helped build the trust and realize that we weren't necessarily looking to impact their business, but to enhance it. And when we were able to look at the Spark as well and adapt, because we might have had some assumptions, but once we worked with Salesforce on the Spark, that also was a light bulb moment in terms of being able to pivot and change some of our priorities and sequencing as well.
Yeah, and I like that you're talking about building trust, because any project, any team can only be successful, right, when you've taken that time, invested in them, and built that trust. And so, and I like hearing from each of you, because you can see that cohesive team and your bigger picture, your 311 team. So cool. And Gary, just if you're giving advice to ops leaders, what would you say was 1 and 2 most critical things they need to think about prior to embracing this?
The first thing I would say is that you need to have a strategy. You need to understand the procurement aspects of it, especially in the municipalities and what have you. Procurement takes a bit of time. So you have to be very clear on the scope of work. You have to be very clear on the outcomes that you want to drive. And you also have to be adaptable in terms of the effort that's required to make that happen. Did I start this thinking it's going to be 5 years? No. But I'm very happy that it's taken those 5 years and we've come out with a quality product that we're all very proud of, and understanding that it takes a village. So I think one of the biggest things that you have to do is have a strong team, strong partnership, but also manage the ego. It's not about one division making this happen. It's about the team driving common outcomes for the people that we serve. And if we understand that, if you're going to approach it from a servant leader perspective, you'll accelerate and do very successful in terms of your project. If you're looking at this as your fiefdom, and this is what you want to build, and we're going to do it this way and only this way, it might take a little bit longer than 5 years.
Yeah, wonderful. And Tim or Justina, either one of you want to add anything before we move forward?
Justina, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think, I think back again just to having really tangible or well-defined outcomes in mind, and just keep those very close to the decision making throughout the project is important. At the same time, flexibility, you just need to build that in as well, because it's an unpredictable environment, and especially the one you worked in or with Gary over the past couple of years. No one could have predicted that we'd be dealing with that situation, and yet we managed to come through. So it's a mix of being really well organized, but also flexible and adaptable.
Yeah. So now that it's been what, 6-7 months since the launch of 311. So what have some of the significant impacts in terms of operational efficiencies been?
Great question. I can give you an example. First of all, when we went live on October 31st, news release on November the 1st, we launched the portal. But then subsequently, shortly thereafter, towards the end of January, we also launched the mobile app, right? So we're always going to improve our touch points and our channels. And that was a great evolution itself, saying we're not just going to lie on the portal, we're going to do different things and access different people in different ways. And what really helped us was, and if we're looking from Toronto's perspective, there was a lovely snowstorm that happened in January. And that snowstorm really tested everyone, transportation, 311, emergency services, many organizations within the city. Normally, on a busy type of day, we're anywhere from about 4,500 to 5,000 calls per day. Now, with the snowstorm, we're up to 17,000 calls per day. And we do not have the ability to ramp up to manage 17,000 interactions in that way. What we did do, though, was ask people to use the portal, to use the knowledge base, to understand the service requests and the thresholds and service levels that came along with that. What we're able to do was go to council and councilors to also be our advocates and leverage the particular portal and also the mobile app with the constituents. What we're also able to do was to go to our partners such as transportation, and there are many media snips where it was call 301, call 301. That stopped. It's now connect to 311. Even with the recent pothole blitz, it was connect to 311. Don't forget the mobile app or the portal. Those are behavioral, cultural changes that were assisted since we've gone live. In terms of data itself, almost in terms of self-service alone, we have almost an additional 1 million transactions since we've gone live in the end of October to now, in terms of the knowledge base and people looking at data and creating their own service requests versus contacting 311. In regards to deflection, about almost 20 to 21% of service requests now are done through the portal or the mobile app, which is amazing. We also have an increased channel, which is through chat and what have you, which is a better experience, which takes the load off of our agents. Not to mention the touch time from each transaction is decreased by about 22%. So we're more effective, more efficient, more channels of choice. And what I've also really like is we have the data against every transaction. And probably by Q4, we'll now be polling everyone on each channel as to how they feel or how they're satisfied with the service that we're providing. We know right now we're on 85%, but this whole initiative was to move from good to great. We're confident we're doing good things, but we want to do great things. And this platform, this partnership is moving us towards that. And I can't wait because the future is truly bright. And our residents are really, lots of positive feedback about the mobile app and from the portals and what have you already. So when we actually do strategic campaigns to really promote this, I can't wait to see what happens.
I like that you have that mindset of good to great. Love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Tim, Justina, anything you want to chime in?
Well, I mean, just with those operational enhancements and improvements, I mean, really bringing that omni-channel approach to the solution, having these numerous different channels of communication to the city of Toronto, I think was huge. We augmented and enhanced some of the existing channels that they already had in place. We also worked very, very closely with Gary and his staff on how to develop some economies of scale within some of the custom intake screens and some of the scripting capabilities that we put into place. And as Gary had talked about before, like that disruption to the business, and not re-engineering all of their processes, and to use his term, kind of the lift and shift approach of how we interact with those businesses. We still put some very, very thoughtful technology in place as it relates to those integrations between sort of the front end Salesforce side of things and that back end downstream work order management side of things. So from a technology standpoint, there were what I'd like to think are quite a few significant improvements to day-to-day operations through the enablement and use of that technology. And so that was pretty impressive and impactful for me.
Wonderful. So is there any questions out there? I know we had that one.
I just wanted to mention also something that's, from our perspective, based on what Gary had talked about. If you look at the numbers in terms of, interaction volumes and use of omnichannel, then this modernization effort at the City of Toronto was a resounding success. However, I think it's really important to keep in mind that modernization shouldn't stop at go live, right? And now that you've kind of created a culture where you're on a bit of a roll in terms of modernizing service and expectations, both on your employee side and citizen side, it's important to continue to innovate. And Salesforce certainly continually innovates and tries to bring in capabilities, new capabilities, optimized capabilities that respond to what our municipal customers need, and we work closely with them to understand what those are. And it's important to continue to build on what's already been developed in the city so that you continue to respond to the expectations that your constituents have in the coming years and months, and not stagnate over time again. So I think it's a very iterative process. Yeah.
And that's the
bang on. So just to say to that, like, we're not, we're continuing, like we said, we want to get to great. So we're not saying we're great yet. It's an evolutionary stage.
Yeah.
And what's the next step in terms of making that happen? We have further consolidations that we have to do in centralizations. We are looking at the tier 0, tier 1, and tier 2 environments, and having a new operating model comes along with that, with new standards, new protocols, and what have you. That's going to really take advantage of this infrastructure that we put in place. What's in the near future? Authentication, which through the help of Tim and his organization has allowed us to build that already within the system. We just have to turn that on. So we are moving forward 100%, but we also want to make sure that we do it in a thoughtful, methodical, and financially responsible manner, because it's public money that we also have to invest in as well. But I assure you that we are definitely moving forward. We're not just taking this and lying very quietly. We're very excited, and we're going to move forward. And I did see that question actually in the chat around agents. So I have a really quick story. So we went live on October the 31st. The mayor comes to make his announcement and really give his blessing on the work that we've done on the 1st of November. On the 1st of November, we're back in 311, COVID environment, everyone's wearing their masks. And we have this huge screen. If you can see pictures of 311, we have this huge screen that's really the lifeline of what's going on in terms of service level interactions, channels, and what have you, and activity. But unfortunately, that screen is all in red because we're in a new system. Even though we've trained everyone, it takes a while. You can't just say, for example, I use that smoking analogy. If you've been smoking for 10 years, and I give you a pamphlet of the danger of smoking, the likelihood of you reading that fully and absorbing it is somewhat slim. There's a greater likelihood of you crushing that pamphlet and throwing it back to me and telling me to mind my own business. It takes a while in terms of change management. It doesn't happen overnight. So with the mayor and what have you, and having that conversation, because we're doing a press release, and it's not great that 26% of the service level that's happening today, but it's about having trust and confidence of the process and knowing those business outcomes, knowing that it takes a bit of time. And I assured him that by the end of the year, we're going to hit that service level and be back to where we are. And we did, because we know the process, and it takes time for change. We can't put all the burden on our staff and expect them to be magicians and what have you. We have to support them through this challenge, and we learn differently at different rates and different speeds at different times. So we have to be patient. And at the same time, what was also amazing with that, the public was aware that we're on Salesforce. So they were calling and saying, oh, you're the new platform. And if someone was, a little nervous, we had comfort from the public saying, take your time. And for the most part, that was, not everyone did that, I can assure you. But for the most part, there was understanding and that relationship, because we already built that through time. So yeah, change management has to be methodical and well thought out, but we're also human beings. And things do happen. To your point about being adaptive, having adaptation methodologies in place, that's something you really have to do with people.
And your agents would have to know that you have their back, because that's what would help them adapt to the change.
Absolutely. It's all about that cultural change, and also not just the technology, but the process of being humanistic and how we communicate, how we interact, how we support each other.
Yeah.
All those things come along with this journey as well. And it's been very exciting.
And so there's another question from Ian here. Beyond your CRM integration, what's next for 311 in terms of your digital transformation?
That's a really good question. I want to make sure that I'm not selling hot dogs after that. And nothing's wrong with selling hot dogs. I love them. The next step really in transformation is our upgrading of our telephony system to make sure they have greater functionality there. Also with our workforce management system, we're in the process of upgrading that. And that's going to be completed by August of this particular year. So we are looking holistically, not just from a CRM perspective, but overall how we manage our data, how we interact. Also, you have to remember, before, prior to COVID, everyone was in the office. We had 180 agents, we have a staff of over 260, but 180 of them came into the office. That's no longer the case. Even with, things are changing and evolving, we're continuing to be a hybrid solution where some people are comfortable working in the office and some people are not. So I think what's the focus in terms of our digital environment? Engagement. Be able to be connected in this new environment, in this remote working environment, with our staff, connected with the public and public sentiment. That's really, really important. And also what's really important in the next steps is quality and performance. We need to understand how we're performing, especially in a remote environment, and also coach people and support people towards a standard. And not only with the 311 standard, because we talked about consolidation. So we're going to bring more divisions into this model, into this tier 1 environment. And more divisions will have to follow that standard around customer service, engagement, the use of data, and performance. Those are our next steps. And then the last thing I'd like to say in terms of our next steps are looking at what's out in the best of, out there as well, and learning from best of practices and people that are also leading the change. We're here to learn. Yeah, we're doing some good things, but we're moving from good to great. And knowing to be great means you have to look at other people and learn and emulate from what they're doing as well. And look at what Salesforce is doing with other organizations, what Tim and Catalyst are doing with other organizations, and leverage that too, because we cannot be complacent.
Yeah, and you know what I've noticed with all three of you is you all have like that growth mindset. Like you're all that can do, let's do more. And I didn't hear can't in your vocabulary. It's like, let's keep learning best practices, borrow from each other. So that's amazing. That's how you can see big things happening. So wonderful, wonderful. So Ian saying thank you to you guys. So any other questions from anyone before we wrap up? And then I'd love for each of you to give some final words as we wrap up the session for today. So yeah, Tim, you had your hand up. You go first, Tim.
Oh, I was just, waving to Ian and saying, thank you as well for having us. But yeah, absolutely. I use this line very recently. But to your comments about the growth mindset, very rarely in life do you ever reach the end in anything. It's always a process of continuous improvement. It's always a process of small adjustments, small moves, with the ultimate goal of continued growth, improvement, and advancement. And I think these modernization efforts are very much an example of that kind of methodology and that philosophy. And so I'm very excited for sort of the next steps in Toronto's evolution. Couldn't tell you how fortunate we felt to be a part of this team and to be a contributing member of this this modernization and transformation effort. As always, Gary and everyone, thank you so much for including me in the presentation today. And I hope I was able to provide at least a little bit of value.
Oh, you've been tremendous, and thank you for sharing. And then Justina and Gary, and then Tim, I have your LinkedIn. Justina and Gary, if you want to pop your LinkedIn into the chats in case anyone wants to reach out to you guys or has questions. So Justina, what are some of your final thoughts?
I would just say that any modernization effort is daunting, right? And sometimes you start out with the best intentions, and then years later, you just have a lot of money spent, a lot of frustrating people, but you don't necessarily achieve the objectives that you have. And so I think in this case, yes, it took a while from the idea to where you are today. However, there's a tailwind, right? Like you have a positive experience, people are excited, there's a lot of enthusiasm, there is measurable benefits to you of what you've been able to accomplish. I think just getting an organization as large, as complex as the City of Toronto to the other side of something like this is just a really wonderful opportunity to then, continue to do more and continue to kind of harness that energy towards other projects. So I think that, it doesn't, if you start out focusing on like that vision, the business value, why are we doing this? How is life going to be better for our employees, for our citizens? How will interacting with us be just easier, more seamless? And you manage to get your teams on side and accomplish that, then it proves you can do it. And then it's just much easier, I think, to continue from there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Justina. And then Gary.
Sure.
You can take us home here.
I'll try. The next thing that we're trying to utilize is the use of the data, the access to the data that we now have within Salesforce. It takes a while to get acclimated to that, the new data, understanding what's happening from a work perspective, the trends and nuances, and providing value add to our constituents, to our council and to the mayor and to the city manager, which then allows us to provide better services overall from the city perspective. It allows us to put better resource allocation and really look at those corporate initiatives around inclusion, equitable service, and things of that nature. And that's what 301 really tries to help and drive. So not only we're looking, at managing interactions from a day-to-day perspective, but using the data to make it a better city. And that's what 301 provides. In terms of any advice I would give is know your business, and also be a bit stubborn. And not arrogant, but stubborn. It's going to be a push and a pull situation at times, and you have to have enough confidence that you're going and doing the right thing. And that confidence can't just come from yourself, it has to come with data, come from proper analysis, from proper partnerships. And if you've done your homework, be confident you're going to drive it home and do it properly and do it with pride. And all I can say is I'm very happy to be on this call with you, Sangeeta. Thank you very much for driving it.
Yeah.
And with Tim and Justina. Awesome work that we've been able to do together right now. And I'm really hoping in the future we'll remove more roadblocks and continue to move from good to great. It's always a privilege working with you and speaking with you. And it's an honor to lead 311 and be part of the City of Toronto as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. And so nice. I just saw another note here from Neil saying thank you. And Janice, very informative and giving you a shout out. Congratulations. Just listening to you three right now. Like I've never been involved in something like this. I'm facilitating a conversation, but I noticed one common thing, and it should be pointed out that the partners you choose to pick for any project, they have to be aligned in terms of their vision for being good, kind, compassionate, and service to people. Because I was listening to like Tim and I should draw a blank here.
Justina.
Justina, like Tim and Justina. I only met them just for prep of this, but throughout they've been consistent about thinking about the citizen, thinking about the employee that's doing the work and utilizing it. They've both had that common, so they can support Gary's vision. So I think that's super critical that the team you put together, even if they're from a massive company with a great reputation, the people you work with have to be aligned in that way. And I feel I can tell because Gary's singing your praises, but just knowing you from this short time, I can see you're so aligned. And I think that would be critical for team members you choose. So I want to say thank you to all of you, Justina, Tim, Gary, thank you so much. And just for those of you attending, you can mark your calendars for May 26th. 5-9 is hosting an event with Unity, and they're going to talk about using different platforms for customer experience. And that link will be sent out pretty soon, but you could save the date. And wish you a wonderful weekend. That's pretty great numbers for a Friday afternoon. So thank you, everyone. Again, thank you, Gary, Justina, and Tim.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thank you
weekend,
very much.
everyone.
And happy
Bye-bye.
Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for putting everything together for us.
Oh, thank you, Tim. Thank you.
Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, that's